Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. In the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to try to answer the question, which is the best B2B marketing channel? We are Ina and Antonia from the Indigitals, marketing consultancy for B2B technology companies. Peter Thiel wrote in his book From Zero to One, it's better to think of distribution as something essential to the design of your product. If you've invented something new, but you haven't invented an effective way to sell it, you have a bad business, no matter how good the product. I'm pretty sure you must be aware of the importance of channel and distribution for your business if you're watching this video. However, before we dig in, we'd like to go through a few scenarios that we see often in our practice in which businesses put excessive focus on some channels, completely overlooking some others, and we're going to discuss the effect this will have on your pipeline, on your funnel, and ultimately your results. Can you recognize yourself in this situation? I guess that most of us, at some point, have been in a situation where the business is all about leads. It's obsessed with leads, and we're putting all our marketing money and efforts on social media ads, Google ads, and other PPC advertising. While this is a great tactic for strengthening the middle of the funnel and gaining some quick marketing traction, it has three serious limitations, which we'd like to talk about. First of all, by putting your money in the platforms, they're the ones in control. You're not in control. Second, a paid campaign has a certain lifespan, and once it's over, you're nowhere to be seen. You have no digital trace. You leave no digital trace. And third, which is to a great extent an effect of the second, is that by focusing excessively on paid campaigns, you're not strengthening your brand. And as I said, that's a great tactic for strengthening the middle of the funnel, but it can hurt your pipeline in the long term, and Antonia
we'll see how later.
Yeah, she'll touch upon this later on. Another situation we see sometimes is when it's all about content. Content marketing used to give you a cutting edge a few years ago. However, in the past years, companies learned how to do it, and since this happened, we're witnessing a content overload on internet. So what happened, since everyone is its own media, is that the content is in a fierce competition to be put in front of the user's eyes. So creation of content without a proper distribution strategy is not the answer either. And something else we wanna talk about briefly is that we should expect drop in our organic traffic. Why? With the introduction of so Google announced their generative AI search a few weeks ago, and it's going to change the search experience for the users. The idea is that, as Google say themselves in the blog announcement, is that they're going to do much of the work instead of the user, meaning that a lot of the information will be, a lot of search results will be compiled in one single entry, so that the user does less clicking, which means less organic traffic to our websites. Mm-hmm. And something else that I also wanted to mention is that, going back to the content slide a minute ago, is that tools such as ChatGPT allowed for production of content at scale, which makes it even more competitive than it used to be.
It becomes the baseline, basically.
Exactly. And content marketing and content creation becomes like a checkbox versus something that gives you an edge. Therefore, coming up with a diversified channel mix is a must-have.
Yeah. Well, Diversification is a general business best practice, isn't it? We all agree that Google ads, social media ads yield quick results. From just a pipeline perspective, however, we should ask ourselves one major question. Can our top of the funnel grow indefinitely using only these channels? And to answer this question, we need to step back and examine our business model. What do we mean by examining the business model? Basically, we focus on things like, what is our average deal size? What is the sale value? Are we trying to sell something that costs that valued at a couple of dollars, or is it something that costs like tens of thousands of dollars? In this case, in this context, we actually talk about different sale processes, transactional versus contracting. Also, different models that we are aiming for, like, are we aiming for high touch, low volume type of sale where we actually don't have a sales force, it's all self-serviced, and then we're going to use a certain type of channels? Or are we talking about high-touch, low-volume type of sale where the average deal size will be really big, but then the channels will be quite different than the scalable type of inbound marketing channels that we are using? You might ask, what does this have to do with my channel mix? Well, basically, the length of your sales cycle and the complexity of the sale define the number of touch points you're going to have with the lead before they decide to purchase. In other words, we are trying to answer the question, is using Google Ads and social media ads good enough to actually reach out to all the leads that we can potentially reach with our brand, or is this limiting our effort to just a fraction of the funnel? Let's have a look at a couple of quick examples to illustrate the two extremes of this spectrum. Say we have a cloud storage company. Obviously, they operate in a mature market because everyone knows what cloud storage is. They're going to have just a couple of touch points with their lead before they decide to purchase. Basically, their clients will likely be first-time users of the service or competitive users, users of competitive services and products. In this case, using PPC and social media ads might make a lot of sense because we are targeting an audience that's quite well informed and they don't need further education. So we just need to offer them the right package at the right time and they will likely purchase. At the other end of this extreme, say we have a software development professional services company. The leads go through a very long process before they decide to purchase, right? The sales cycle is likely 6 to 9 months. Not only this service is quite expensive, it also requires a lot of effort and investment on the client side. Those projects are usually large scale, so they might even cost our buyer persona's job if the project is a failure. And obviously we don't talk about a buyer persona only here, because as we mentioned previously in other videos talking about the persona and in B2B marketing, we usually talk about the buyer group. So we have decision maker, we have influencers, we have users of the service. So it's a lengthy process in which we have to kind of touch every single buyer persona within this group with different messaging, different content and content formats. And at the end, this lead's gonna get into the sales force pool where they're gonna have to handhold them until they make a purchase. At the end, it kind of makes sense that we're going to be using an arsenal of channels to kind of guide this lead from the awareness stage until they make a purchase. So with this first step of the exercise, basically we are trying to kind of decide the general direction of our marketing mix and map it against our sales model. Next, we kind of make an inventory list of what we currently have as own channels. We start with the website because this is the most important asset that the company has. So we ask questions like, what is the state of our website? Does it accommodate all the buyer persona journeys, for example? What is the CTA flow? Is the content, what is the tone of voice of the content? Is it on brand? Blog, what is the publishing cadence? Do we have a content calendar? Do we take into account the SEO and the buyer persona perspective when building the themes and topics for the content? SEO, how do we fare against competition? Are there any easy wins that we can snatch? Social media, is this relevant to our buyer persona? Does it make sense? What is the goal there? And what kind of channels, what kind of networks do we like to use there? And email marketing, going back to the example that we gave with the extreme of like high touch, low volume type of sale. Usually when the sales cycle is very lengthy, you're going to be using a lot of nurturing. So email marketing might make a lot of sense to be used to nurture leads. How are we using this channel? And video and podcast, is this relevant to our buyer persona? And sale process, are we using it? After this step, we actually do another inventory list, this time with the content that we currently have, that existing content, what kind of formats we have. Is it time-sensitive versus evergreen? Obviously, we cannot reuse time-sensitive content, but like if we have evergreen content, can it be repurposed and reused? For example, in podcasts, do we have any video or webinar content that can be transcribed and used as blog posts? And at the end of this three-step exercise, we are supposed to have a very clear picture where we stand. Like, what is basically the general direction in which we would like to take our channel mix, mapped against the sales model, and basically the effort we're going to have on the sales team. What are the own channels where we stand there, and what kind of content we have at our fingertips that we can use to expand the channel mix. And next, we actually make a wish list of all the channels that are relevant to our buyer persona and that are feasible to us to use. We started with the owned media, but then we continue with earned media. And this is the next low-hanging fruit to acquire new channels that are free, using digital PR, social media mentions, partnerships, evangelism, to expand our brand exposure and generate leads. Paid media is also here, but we do not limit ourselves just to PPC and social media ads. We expand our search for industry media, events, associations, different channels that can actually increase our digital footprint and help us nurture leads and have them exposed to our brand in a more significant way.
So I'll go back to the previous slide. Here we broke down the channels into paid, earned, and owned. And as Antonia said, at this point we make a wish list of all the channels we'd like to use. And maybe you're wondering, okay, but these are a lot of channels. How do I prioritize them? So one way to go about it in a structured way is to use this approach. On this graphic, we have mapped the channels and formats available that are relevant for each stage of the funnel. For the purposes of this graph, we've included just 3 stages. Of course, you can break them down in more, whatever makes sense for your business. And this is basically a list. It's not super comprehensive of all channels available out there, but let's say if you have them all figured out, you're in a pretty good place.
It gives you an idea. Yeah.
Yes. So go through that list and see which ones you're lacking and which ones you want to develop. And also another way to think about it is think about which stage of the funnel needs most attention. Consult with, of course, with the other teams in your company, because this is not just a marketing decision. And then prioritize the channels that are relevant to this funnel, to this stage. And just one note on how to use this graphic. All the channels that we've mapped against the awareness stage are of course relevant for the next, but just for simplicity, we have added the new channels that you can use for each new stage, like consideration and conversion, like for example email, which you cannot really use for awareness because at this moment you don't have the users' emails.
Yeah, Ina earlier talked about obsession with leads and how this can influence your funnel, basically. A lot of companies indeed obsess with leads, really spending their entire budgets on Google ads, social media ads, hoping to net leads fast. The thing with PPC and social media ads to a large extent is that you're actually influencing just the middle of the funnel. If you're not balancing your approach, if you're not investing in the top of the funnel, eventually it will erode, it will become thin, and your funnel will break. Investing in top of the funnel indeed requires a lot more patience because it takes time to deliver results, but that's the only way to not just build a growing number of leads at the top of the funnel continuously, but also to build brand awareness and brand recognition. With PPC and social media, you cannot really reach the snowball effect of marketing, because the moment you stop paying for social media ads and for PPC, your digital footprint shrinks back to zero. Another reason not to put all your eggs in the PPC basket is that you're not the one in control, as we previously discussed. Google and LinkedIn are. And lastly, a couple of words about the neglected channels, as we call them. In a world of AI-powered tools and platforms, we are kind of eager to master the prompts and use the latest tips and tricks to leverage generative AI. And we are definitely in favor of using those for like marketing productivity and even creativity. But we should not forget that at the end of the day, we are trying to sell and market to human beings. And we believe that in the future, the human factor will be more important than ever. In that context, one of the channels that is often neglected by a lot of companies we work with is industry media. It might sound old school to you because in the past decade, basically their importance diminished thanks to social media, to mobile apps, to SEO.
Thanks to the fact that every company became its own media.
As well, yeah, definitely. No one wanted to give them the power of distributing their content and basically building awareness. But the thing with industry media is that they can help you really build human relationships and have your brand really be engraved, stay longer, especially when we talk about industry-specific, vertical-specific content. So you can use a lot of various content types and formats that are not accessible through social media and PPC. Like you can take part in associations, go to events, take part in awards. This is something else that's really overlooked usually by companies. And really build relationships that last longer and help your brand stay longer and your digital footprint stay longer. Same goes for PR, but not really in the meaning of PR distribution, but rather like really building public relations and analyst relations and taking part in awards.
To summarize what we talked about in this video, we're coming back to this slide and these graphics. So we talked about some practices in which we obsess with some channels and overlook others. We talked about how, for example, focusing excessively on middle of the funnel affects and hurts your funnel and pipeline in the future. We talked about how we make an inventory of the channels we have, the wish list. We talked about how to prioritize which channels will develop by mapping them to the funnel and the stages of the funnel that needs most attention. We talked about the neglected channels that we see in our practice yielding great results. And maybe you're thinking, but like this is hard. Oh, well, yes, it is, right? So unfortunately, we haven't discovered a shortcut or a workaround to figuring out fast, easy, and in a cheap way, which is the best B2B marketing channel. So to answer the question, what is the best B2B marketing channel? We would say it's the best channel is a well-balanced portfolio of diversified channels. And to come to this point where you know which are the channels that work best for your business in your particular niche, you need to have patience, you need to have discipline and willingness to spend some money. Right? Patience. Yeah. Patience.
Yeah, and since we mentioned spending money, if you need, obviously a lot of marketers are well aware of the fact that they need to use a balanced approach towards their channel, but not necessarily their top management. So if you need to convince your managers in the exercise and the fact that they need to diversify their channels, not using only Google Ads, social media ads, spending their budgets on them, feel free to use this video and the PDF we're going to be sharing.
Yeah, we're going to upload a link to the presentation in the description of the video, as well as our LinkedIn profiles. So if you want to touch base and talk about this in more detail, we'll be happy to talk to you. Thanks.
Thanks for watching.